Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts. I hope you'll call me Beast if you ever see me out and about. And with me tonight, Dr. Mary White. Mary, how are you?
I'm doing so good, Tim. I'm so glad to see you and have really been glad to participate in these series. Now, you read the book, kind of the series is based on, but I have not.
Right, which was sort of by design because I was like,
Yeah.
well, let me read the book, take notes, get some ideas. The book is Learning to Love Midlife by Conley. Tonight we're finishing up our 6 conversation series. Tonight we're talking about the spiritual life, but don't worry, everybody, we're not going to get super deep into religious stuff. It's more about finding your inner soul and calming down and finding your center and your joy and your peace and how you're putting that out in the world. That's what we're going to be talking about. And Mary, I've loved this whole series, and I think this makes sense that this might be where we finish.
Yeah, I think when you talked about like finding your soul and your center, I think I can take something from every one that we've done and kind of like put it all together in like a calmness and a peace about things. And that is sometimes very difficult. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's difficult to do that.
Well, but that's really the premise of this conversation, and this his point about this part of the conversation is, the whole point is finding yourself, giving yourself permission to slow down, find your real joy. Where do you want to go next? How do you want to share your expertise and all the wisdom you've learned? How do you want to harvest all the stuff you've harvested? How do you want to share it? And so this is where we're going next. He started the conversation in a really interesting way. He talks about if you're heading into your midlife time, say you're just retiring from your job or your life has changed and you're heading into this third act of life, as he's been calling it. If you feel stuck or lost, like you're missing your compass, maybe you're bored, you're not sure what your direction is,
Right.
his message is that's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out as you enter this next phase. You have to trust that you will be able to harvest all that wisdom and things and find your direction. And I loved that sort of starting point of, if you're feeling like this is weird and different and I don't feel grounded like I normally do, that is understandable.
But you could have been grounded in something that is like your work. You could have been grounded in that instead of yourself or your relationship. Like I think I shared last time, and I felt like I shared too much last time, Tim, but I was really attached to my work. That was kind of my life.
Absolutely. You were doing great work.
And now, like, to slow that down and to find yourself again and find who you are and all that stuff. I mean, yeah, it's still a work in progress for sure.
Right. But his point, sort of starting this concept of the spiritual life and that part of yourself, we've talked about this, is you're going to have to sort of rethink, who am I? Here's a quote that he wrote. All of this can be disorienting, but don't fret. A new primary operating system is being installed in your life, upgrading you from the era of the ego to the stage of the soul. This is why in midlife, many of us turn inward. We realize that our soul needs space and solitude and quiet. I know that's true for me. Or perhaps it's that we need the space and solitude and quiet to reconnect with our soul. But as we talked about recently, you have this time of fluence to be able to stop and slow down and consider. This is a real gift we get that we can give ourselves here, is let me take time, be quiet, and reconnect with my inner self now that all of the stuff has maybe starting to settle.
And I love that concept too, as well as like a new operating system. Tim, it's like, we're constantly updating our phone. It's okay. Here comes Socks. Sorry. We always say hello to Socks
My
and
socks.
bye. But like the idea of a new operating system, like it's okay to take that time to find yourself and find your soul and treat it as a process. He's had some really great quotes, Tim, and that's one of them, go
Yeah.
from ego, did you say ego, to the soul? I mean,
Right. He says, for example, the first half of your life, when we're talking about the work and stuff that we were talking about, you're sort of forming your healthy ego. This is a good thing. You're finding yourself. You're finding who you think you are, how you're putting yourself out in the world. But he says the second half of life, which is this midlife time, is about going inward and letting go of your ego. He calls it stand up and show your soul, which is interesting. He quotes a woman named Clarissa Estes, and she says, one of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. In other words, bring the light to the situation, or as she says, your courage can give me courage. So this is when we're talking about showing up for the world and making a gift and being a gift to the world. Part of it is showing your real self and bringing that light to difficult situations.
Didn't you have a blog post about that the other day?
I just talked about this. Yes. I talked about being the light. But this, I feel like my idea is, and I've got this from many other wonderful people that I've been reading and studying, the idea that if you're in the middle of turbulent times, sort of stormy times, dark clouds seem to be around, maybe my job, the reason I'm here right now on the planet at this moment, is to be one of the people that helps to bring that light. And I think that's what they're talking about here. You have the ability, maybe the knowledge and the experience, and now you have this moment in life when you can stop and you can make sure that you're showing up, showing everybody your soul, who you really are, and bringing that light to the world.
And it has a certain calmness to it, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
A certain peace, as you said, it's like a really, I hate, it's overused, but like a Zen moment, a little bit.
Is. And the thing is, like, to give yourself permission to do that, and to give yourself permission to, like, realize, okay, I'm not good at this yet, or this is new, or I'm not sure who I am. Like, this is sort of where we're starting this whole conversation. And that's okay. Give yourself permission to figure it out, but take time to sort of think, let me settle, let me get quiet, let me have that solitude, let me settle into who I am and how I can bring that light to the world. Here's another quote from the book that I love. He says, the soul needs meaning as nourishment. Meaning can come in many forms, but it often comes in the form of service. Through service, you discover a greater sense of who you are and what you're capable of, because you're being guided by your soul instead of your ego. And I do think you are able to sort of take this, turn this corner,
right,
redefine yourself, do that harvesting of all your knowledge and wisdom. Then I think you are able to bring a calmer, bigger perspective to the world from your soul, from a higher place,
right,
than from your ego place where we used to be.
Almost from the balcony. Heifetz, who's from Harvard, talks about standing on the balcony and looking down at things, because sometimes we get lost on the dance floor. But if you stood up on the balcony and now that became very clear to you, or not clear, but at least you could point things out and, not be so stressed about being on that dance floor.
Sometimes it's like these beautiful cities in Europe where there's like a castle up on the hill overlooking this beautiful town. And if you have the great ability to go up there and see this vista, it's calm and beautiful. And you have a different perspective on the world than you are if you're down in the middle of the city.
Yeah. I mean, I love this. I always talk about this, by the way, about standing up on the balcony and seeing things, particularly in stormy times or complex times, or when things are getting very complicated and maybe a little mushy and yucky, crunchy. But it's really nice, Tim. This is a really nice way to, in terms of his thoughts on this.
I agree. And, I feel like for me, we're in turbulent, unknown, scary times, sort of. And it really helps me to think, okay, my job is to show up with my soul, as we just said, and then to bring that light to the situation, because you don't know what everybody else is going through, how scared they are. And if I can simply bring the best of myself, bring some light to every situation I enter, I don't want it to feel like pressure. It just feels like an opportunity for me to use that wisdom that we've been talking about, we've been harvesting.
Yeah. And that was, to me, one of the main points of the book, is that, in this act, this third act, you're really reaping all the harvest. You're harvesting all the good stuff you've done, all the work, all the, you could be more affluent. You could have all these different things. So harvesting that and really enjoying it. And I think that takes, more soul to enjoy all that than ego.
Right. He sort of talked about, we used to live vertically and now we're going to live more. No, we used to live horizontally, and now we're going to think and live more vertically, think a
Yeah.
little more high-minded, and we have the ability to do that. Here's another quote that he wrote that I really liked. Many wise philosophers have suggested that our aging process is meant to reveal the beauty that has always been hidden inside of us. Perhaps if we recognize and accept that our inner beauty shines brighter as we age, fewer of us would worry about being old. We would come to realize that our purpose in midlife is to emulate the sculptor Michelangelo, who unlocked David from the stone.
That's brilliant, really.
Isn't that lovely? So that beautiful, wonderful person that might have been hidden, that beauty that may have been hidden inside me, now is my chance to chisel the rest of it away and show it and share it. And I think having gone through everything up to midlife allows me to now have the courage and the self-reliance and the
confidence.
Yes, to be able to really show my light to the world unfiltered.
This is sometimes hard, Tim, like in this social media world where we're constantly seeing pictures of ourselves, or, it's really, you're like, well, this, that's a lot of wrinkles,
I posted something the other day, and one of my old students who I taught like 30 years ago was like, "Hey, old man, how you doing?" And I was like, "Okay," but
enough of that.
I took it in stride with a bit of fun. And he hadn't seen me in 30 years. So, I'm doing okay. By the way.
tell you, I was at the airport the other day, and some young person said, "Would you like to sit down?" No, I don't need to sit down.
But that was someone trying to be kind.
Really, I'm taking it personally.
Well, listen, I that's part of this too, is we do have those challenges of what, how we can be treated or how we feel. But this is sort of the point of this, is start to own it a little bit. Okay, I'm getting older. I have a few wrinkles, but that's okay. He talks a lot in the book about the wrinkles on our face are like the rings on a tree. Well, you can't see those rings, but all of that history that the tree has lived is in those rings. Well, we happen to wear them on our face, but that's okay, because I no longer am so attached to my ego. Again, the premise of tonight. Right. And I'm going to live more from my soul, from my inner beauty, and try to bring that out.
And what was that other thing? It was a few times ago we talked about, we move from youth to use. That kind of reminds me of that, a little bit, like moving away from that youthful, unwrinkled, if you will, if we can say that again, to like knowing your soul and knowing your light and moving forward with it.
It's just sort of like a different context for going through your life and going through your day. And rather than I have to show and prove and be, you're just sort of like, well, I am, and I'm going to just relax into this and enjoy harvesting all the work I've done. Right. And maybe don't worry so much. We talked about in the physical thing recently, don't worry so much about how you look or what everybody thinks, whatever. You can just sort of let a lot of that go. How am I feeling about how I'm moving through the world? Great. I'm going to work on that. I like all these ideas. You mentioned about social media a minute ago. This is one of the things he also talks about.
Good.
Try to be more present, be more conscious of how you're feeling and doing and what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Become more integrated with ourselves and others. Focus more on the present. How are you welcoming more presence in your life? How could you spend 30 minutes less online each day and use that time to find presence in nature through meditation, by journaling? He suggests that we go sit under a tree and just enjoy nature and the tree. And, that's much more helpful, I think, to my day than doom scrolling through another sad social media.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've talked about this throughout this whole series, that I'm definitely making an attempt. Like, I don't need that. I'm not going to look like Kim Kardashian ever, and so I'm just like moving to more reading. That is something that I love. So I'm moving to more, doing that rather than scrolling through.
And actually, that takes us to the final point that I wrote down today that I want to talk about. And you've segued to it perfectly. He talks about what are the things that enliven you, that bring you joy? And he talks about like really stop and make a list.
Right.
Think about what are the things now that I'm here, I'm in this third act, I'm in this midlife time. What are the things that really enliven me? What are the things that bring me joy, that bring me energy, that excite me? And it can be completely different things than what they ever were before. But take time to think about it and maybe have that conversation with somebody helpful that loves you or knows you, and maybe like figure that out. Because I've been doing a lot of that lately, Mary. I've really been thinking, like,
Love that.
what is it that really brings me joy? And how can I do more of that? And what are the things that really never have? How can I do less of those?
Mm-hmm. Like, give me an example, Tim, of something you thought about. Or you don't have to share if you.
Well, let me think.
And what do you want to do less of?
Well, like for example, I do need to read every day. Like I need to stop, even if it's 20 minutes, I need to stop and just give myself that gift, because I know that I do better when I have that personal quiet time and I sort of snuggle away wherever I happen to go and have my space and do that. I do better. And that's much better for me, certainly, than, as we said, being on the computer and scrolling through a social. Forget it. I'm not doing that. I think I also told you I like learning things, and I put a new app, the Imprint app, on my phone. In the morning, rather than looking at news, I'll look at headlines or something briefly, and then I'll do this. I'll learn a little philosophy, and it's been the most wonderful way to start the day.
What is it called? I'm sorry, I didn't
It's
hear.
called Imprint. IMPRINT, and it's just a little app, and like you do a little lesson each day, and it takes maybe 5 minutes. Today I learned about William James, the philosopher, and how it gives you sort of concepts of how you think about who you are in the world and suffering in the world, and what does it mean, and how all of these pretty high-minded concepts.
Right.
I have found that to be a better use of my time in the morning to get my day going than scrolling through Facebook or something that always just makes me upset.
Right. Like I do my puzzles every day. Every New York Times puzzle that I could possibly done, strands, connections, Wordle, and the puzzle.
Right. And the other thing, too, is not only what enlivens you, but he also asks to make a list of things that you'd like to do to play. Because I feel like we don't allow ourselves really a lot of times to play. I like going to the gym. That's fun time for me, not every single time, but usually I'm really glad to be there. I like going to the theme parks and walking around and having fun, and I just enjoy being there. So these are things that I take time for. I make time for, because I know that it's part of something that makes me happy. And everybody's different. Some people it's tennis or golf or macrame or scrapbooking. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's just becoming aware, thinking about, okay, I have a little time affluence. What is really going to bring me joy? And things that don't, I can let those go.
Sure. I love that idea. And I think it's really hard to kind of slow it down and think about what does really make me happy, Like as we were talking, I was like, what makes me happy? I'm thinking about things like that.
But I think it's a really good exercise. I think that I would like to encourage everybody to do it, especially if you find yourself in your midlife time and you're perhaps changing your life, trying some new things, as we discussed earlier in this series, being a beginner and being bad at something and taking chances and going out there and trying new things and giving back to the world in all the ways that you can share your expertise in unexpected ways. But, also think about, well, what are the things what really brings me joy? How do I like to play? And that can be anything from throwing Frisbee on the beach to riding your bike to, writing your novel. It's whatever brings you joy.
I'd like to play cornhole, Tim.
There you go.
I'm pretty good at it. Like,
really?
I've lost a lot of stuff in my life and have a pretty accurate understanding of where it has to go, I know you think that's...
Well, do you have a cornhole game set?
Yeah.
Well, then you should play more.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there you go. There's one.
It's so ridiculous. I just shared that.
No, I think the point is what was that?
I'd like to learn how to play pickleball. I'm so late to that pickleball game, but it's so maybe 2018, but
who cares, Mary? That's the point. It doesn't matter if it's cool or hip or current. It doesn't matter. If you want to buy McCall's patterns and sew your own clothes, go at it. It does not matter.
We're really dating ourselves by saying McCall patterns, by the way. I don't think anyone knows what that is. But
And I'm owning that, everybody. Well, because if you ever go to Joann's Fabrics or something, which I have wandered around looking for something for Halloween, probably, like, you run across all of these things. And my point is, we're not worrying what anybody thinks about it. We're not, like, I love people that find their thing. I have friends that are my age that love playing Dungeons and Dragons and get together with a group of friends every week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the best social outlet. You go. Like, I don't care.
I think that's a great idea. Like, we know John Bogenschutz, he's like really into disc golf. That's like the coolest thing. And board games. Like, he does, it's very cool.
So, but the point is, everybody, is think about this. What is it that you like to do that brings you joy? Find others perhaps to do that with, or just do it yourself. But allow yourself to do that. The last concept is about, he says that growing and aging are the same thing. Because when we think about growing when you're young, oh, the little kid, oh, look how tall you are. You're growing. Good for you. But we don't talk that way when people are in their midlife time.
You're right. And that really lends itself to is constantly learning and growing and process orientation. That really lends itself to that. I really like that. That I'm going to take away.
Yeah. And he asks, ask yourself, how are you still growing today? Right? Like, what are you doing to keep growing? And as you said, that can be learning, that can be trying new things. But one of the whole premises of this conversation we've been having over these 6 sessions and in the book, as I've been using it as a reference, is this very idea of now is your chance to, like, keep growing into whatever, learning all these, trying new things, change your life, move to a new place, do whatever is going to help you just keep experiencing life. And now we're talking about in the spiritual one, keep experiencing that life, but more from the soul, from the inside out. That is a wonder. If you can be consciously thinking, what makes my soul happy? How can I express my inner beauty, my inner soul, and bring that to the world? That's what we're talking about tonight. And I feel like all of that is something that's worth some time to think about.
It's incredible, Tim. I mean, really, I really have a lot to think about, like some more to think about. And
Perfect.
I love it.
Well, that's the whole point of this whole series, everybody, is, listen, we've talked about from the very beginning, the midlife time can be anywhere from 35 all the way through your 70s. Like, it's this big swath of time. Everybody sort of encounters it at whatever point they do. And then let's be productive during that time.
Right.
And if you're happy to find this conversation and you haven't seen the others, remember that there are 5 more before us where we talk about all the other different aspects, overcoming the stereotypes, the physical life, the emotional life, all of those things that we talked about. Hopefully it's given me a lot to think about, Mary, and I feel like I'm sort of better equipped to have a different context of how I think about my life now in my midlife time. It's not a big downhill slog.
Yeah, a construct.
Right. I think having that sort of premise, that construct to work from, this new paradigm, even to work from as I go into this time and move through this time, I want to do it with grace and ease and being kind to myself and kind to others. And it's been very helpful to think about all this stuff.
And that's been a theme too, out of all this entire series about, I hesitate to call it kindness, but it's almost about being good to yourself and good to others, so that, kindness could be a part of that. So I think that's been a running theme.
Absolutely. And then the other is sort of letting yourself turn into whoever you really, really want to be. Like, turn your life into what you ever really, listen, you're in the final act, everybody. There's no time to waste. And we don't want you to be frantic about that. But the point is, give yourself permission, I'll say, to, like, rethink it and rethink about yourself and try some new things and consider something you never would have considered before. And then harvest all that information and wisdom and experience and figure out how you can sort of give back and serve and still continue to give to the world. All of this, to me, Mary, is really inspiring. And I love this sort of context for thinking about my life.
Yeah, it has been like so much good conversation we've had. And so
Absolutely.
thought-provoking work on yourself, but also I find it very helpful to talk about it with someone. Like one of the reasons I've enjoyed the conversations because we've been talking about it together, you know.
Absolutely. So hopefully our conversations that we
So
have shared do what?
it does not have to be solo work.
Right. And that's my point. Maybe this will inspire others to sort of get together with friends or a friend or whoever and sort of start talking about these concepts together. Have a lunch with all the girls and start talking about, well, how are we doing this? And let it be part of your social community too. Like have conversations and support each other through this sort of new exploring time that we're doing.
Yeah, love it.
Mary, thanks for having these conversations. It's been super fun.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.